Sheriff Harris arrives at the football field along with 2 state troopers. There is also 5 deputies from his office over at Christ Bay that are on the way as well. Sheriff Harris thanks them for coming over. Sheriff Harris pulls out a map of Candy Water and places it on his hood. One of the deputies hands Sheriff Harris a black marker, and the sheriff divides the town into 8 blocks. He assigns each officer a block and tells them to leave no stone unturned. Sheriff Harris does not know how many people will show up, but they will show up in the next hour to help with the search. Showing up in the next hour is Joe Sr., Ray, and Michael. They have decided to volunteer in the search efforts. They also decide it would be best for the boys to stay home. They figured they don't need any added mental stress. Angie is home, so she will stay with the boys and make sure they don't sneak out. The boys disagree with their dads. They desperately want to join in and search for Ryan. Even after hearing no for over 5 minutes straight, they still try to convince their dads. But it is a losing cause, and the boys are walked across the street to the Gonzalez household. As the boys go inside, Ray makes a comment to Michael and Joe Sr. Now is the perfect time to watch the tape. No one is at Joe's house, and they still have an hour to the search party. Michael looks to Ray and says that's a good idea. Ray and Michael then look over to Joe Sr. for his approval. Joe nods head and they walk back to Joe's house. After much anticipation, the men were finally going to view the content of the videotape. Michael inserted the tape into the VCR, and it began to play. The 3 stood over the television, and their eyes were glued to the screen. Ray became impatient and told Michael to fast forward the tape. Joe then asked if the tape had recorded the entire night. Michael turned to Joe and assured him it had recorded from the time he went to sleep to the time he woke up. As the 2 spoke, Ray cut in and told them to look at the screen. Ray rewinded the tape and then paused it. Michael and Joe stopped talking, then looked at the television screen. They were lost for words and taken back at what they saw. At no point throughout the Lance family tenure at their house had anyone seen them or any vehicle. On the paused video cassette was a car in the Lance driveway. It was an older style, perhaps from the 80s. The window appeared to be tinted, and the color of the car resembled a navy blue color. Michael then told Ray to press play. Maybe there is more. Ray pressed play on the VCR. The 3 stayed focused on the television, looking for anything else they might spot. The garage door opened and the car pulled in. Ray once again paused the video. Michael was upset by this action. Ray said to hold on. Through the video, they began to look around the garage to see if anything might be odd. The 3 looked in closely and tried to see what was in there. Unlike most garages, the garage did not have any tools or bikes. This one had something no other garage had, at least no normal garage that the men knew about. The 3 noticed and pointed out that on the back of the wall of the garage was a black body bag. The men gasped, and Joe Sr. told Ray to press play and see what else the tape has. Ray pressed play. As the brake lights on the car came on, the garage door began to close. The driver door opened as the garage door closed before revealing any person. They looked at the timestamp and saw that it was 11 at night. They fast-forward the tape and nothing was going on. It wasn't till 5 in the morning that something else happened. The garage door opened and out came the car. It was too dark to see inside the car. However, they did notice the door from the house opened before the garage closed. The tape came to an end. Ray mentioned the timing of the traffic is very suspicious. Moving around late at night and early in the morning. Michael also noted that there is at least 2 of them. One that is driving and one that was in the house. Ray then asked the question, why move around when everyone is asleep? Joe Sr. says he doesn't know, but not to jump to any conclusions. There could be a number of reasons why they do move around late. Ray says sarcastically only criminals move around at that time. Joe Sr. says they don't know that. They only know what time they should worry about his now, and right now they should head over to the football field. It was time to leave the house. Ray ejected the tape and handed it over to Michael. They loaded up the minivan, and Joe drove them over to the football field. Ray and Michael discussed what they should do next to explore their neighbors. Joe told him to calm down and they arrived at the field. A large group had gathered at the football field. Sheriff James and Agent Copper looked over and saw the group as they arrived at the high school. They made their way over to the principal and greeted him. The principal had a bolt cutter tool with him. The three then walked over to Sarah's locker, and the principal cut the lock off. Agent Copper and Sheriff James put on gloves and went through her items. There were some photos of Sarah and her friends, along with 2 textbooks. Alongside these textbooks were something Agent Copper found interesting. It was Sarah's journal, along with 2 other books. Agent Copper asked Principal Diaz if these were school-issued books. Looking over, the principal viewed them and told Agent Copper these were not school books. The title of the books were The Dark View and Summoning the Spirit. By the cover of these books, they were not school-issued or any kind you would find at a store. Agent Copper opened one up and saw that the book had more than just English words. He placed it in the evidence bag for further viewing. Agent Copper asked Principal Diaz if Sarah had a gym locker. The principal said yes, and they made their way to the locker room. The principal cut the lock on that locker, and Agent Copper went through it. There was nothing out of the ordinary, just gym clothes. Agent Copper and Sheriff James thanked the principal, and they left the school. They left with the evidence, the bags consisting of the journal and the 2 books. Agent Copper and Sheriff James head back to the office to go over the items collected from Sarah's locker. As they arrive back at the office, they go into Sheriff James' office and go over the books. Sheriff James goes over the journal and Agent Copper looks at the 2 books. After 30 minutes, they compared notes on what they have read. Sheriff James tells Agent Copper about the journal. Nothing too interesting, just stuff a teenage girl would write. No fighting, no deep thoughts. However, she did write down an entry, the date of her murder. Simply put, that tonight is a night everything will change. Interesting comments. But just what exactly did she mean about everything will change? As far as the books, from what I gather, these are books of black magic. It appeared that Sarah and probably her friends are reading and maybe practicing dark magic. Did her friends mention anything of this? Agent Copper asked. No. None of them mentioned anything like that. But then again, why would they? They all gave the same story and were saddened by the news. There was one friend, though she appeared nervous during the interview. They all mentioned how good of friends they were. They should know about this, Sheriff James says. We need to call them back in. Let's see if their stories have changed. This black magic stuff is serious. I have seen books like these, cults that develop and people that get hurt. This may be the break we're looking for, Agent Copper says. Well, this is something new to me. I haven't had to deal with anything like this before. Lead the way, Agent Copper. Hopefully this is the lead we are looking for, Sheriff James says. The search for Ryan is currently underway. Sheriff Harris is leading the way with his 2 state troopers and 5 deputies. Over 100 Candywater citizens have showed up to offer their support. Along with those hundreds of volunteers are the parents of Joe Jr., Rick and Steve. The boys desperately wanted to go and help with the search party. Instead, they are at Steve's house. They looked out the window and wonder where Ryan can be. They wonder if this search party can find out anything of Ryan's whereabouts. They sit patiently and wait. The only thing is, these are traits the boys don't possess. Joe Jr. says he doesn't want to sit here and have to wait. They have to do something. There has to be a way to help and find Ryan. Steve agrees and goes over to his bookshelf. He pulls out of the book and places it on his desk. Only, this is not a book, but rather an atlas of the area. Rick nods his head in approval. The boys look over the atlas and begin to mark where Ryan might have gone. There are fields near Ryan's home and the fields near the cul-de-sac. Steve also points out the length of Shadowbrook Road. If Ryan took the shortcut home, the road behind the cul-de-sac, it would have been down County Road 109. This county road is a dark, lightless road. During summer times, the boys would go down the road, and after seeing how dark it is, they called it Shadowbrook Road. Looking at the atlas, they had no idea how long the road was. Based on the measurement and length, this road was 15 miles long. The boys began to wonder if the search party will look down this road. Joe Jr. told his friends if the search party doesn't look down the road, then they would. They vowed then to find their friend. As these group of friends go all in to find their friend, another group of friends went into the sheriff's office. Sarah's 4 friends found themselves back in the office of Sheriff James. Only this time Agent Copper would be conducting the interviews. Agent Copper asked Sheriff James which of the friends was nervous the last time around. Sheriff James said that the friend Emily appeared to be the nervous one. Agent Copper said they will interview her first, and if she breaks, then maybe the other will too. Emily is escorted into the interview room, where Agent Copper and Sheriff James are seated. "Hello, Emily, I am Agent Copper. I am assisting Sheriff James with the investigation of Sarah. I understand you were friends. I have a few questions. These books and Sarah's journal were taken out of her locker. Do you recognize any of them?" "No, sir. I haven't seen them," Emily says. Like before, Emily appears to be slightly nervous and stares at the books. "Emily, anything you can tell us would be a great help. You would be surprised how the smallest piece of information would be. Sarah was your friend. If the roles were reversed, would you want Sarah to help you?" Agent Copper says. Emily begins to cry uncontrollably. Sheriff James walks over and places his hand on her shoulder. Emily continues to cry, and Agent Copper tells her it will be okay. Emily began to regain her composure. She still cries but is ready to speak to Agent Copper and Sheriff James. "We didn't think much of it. We just thought they were books. The more we read them, the more we thought we could do it. We thought we could get powers. Like levitation and moving stuff. We didn't think anything would happen." Emily then stops talking and crying. "What happened, Emily? What happened that you didn't know what happened?" Agent Copper asked. Emily wipes away a tear from her face. She looks at Sheriff James and Agent Copper, and her tone changes. Instead of nervous and fear, she takes on a more hateful and unfavorable tone. "No. I want a lawyer. In fact, I don't want to talk no more. I'm leaving this place and so are my friends. Next time you call our parents and they will give you the number to our lawyers." Emily says that as she stands up. She begins to walk out and Agent Copper pleads to Emily one last time. "Emily, please. What happened that night?" "We can help," Agent Copper says. Emily ignores the plea from Agent Copper and walks out the interview room. As she walks out, she tells her friends they don't have to be there. She tells them if they don't have a lawyer they can leave. The friends look at Agent Copper and he nods his head. The friends get up and follow Emily out of the station. "That didn't go too well, Agent Copper. It seemed like we were about to get something, but then we were shut down." "What do you want to do now?" Sheriff James says. "That was perfect, Sheriff James. She knows something, they all know something. Now we know they know. It couldn't have gone any better. What we do now is place a surveillance team on them. Then we'll find out what they know," Agent Copper says. Sheriff James nods in approval of what Agent Copper said. Sheriff James begins to realize that Agent Copper is a genius in disguise. His work and the usage of his words are incredible. Even though it seemed like Emily had a defeat on us, that is what Agent Copper expected. It's exactly what he wanted. Never had Sheriff James witnessed such genius. Dawn walked in and cut into their conversation. She told Sheriff James and Agent Copper that the railroad company had faxed over the schedule. The schedule also included the personnel that were aboard the train. It appears that 2 different trains had passed through town last night and early morning. One train at 11:30 p.m. and another at 3:05 a.m. Agent Copper looked over the schedule and saw the names of the personnel. Agent Copper picked up the phone and called his field office. He told the person on the other side of the phone to call the train company and hold the personnel for questioning tomorrow. Agent Copper hung up the phone and told Sheriff James they have plans for tomorrow. Don also mentioned that the corner office called again. He wants to know if the sheriff was going to pick up the report or if he should fax it over. Agent Copper told Don they would stop by tomorrow to pick it up in the morning. Don informed the corner that Agent Copper and Sheriff James would stop by in the morning. Agent Copper told Sheriff James that he would like to look over the body himself. Sometimes a coroner may overlook small details that could help their investigation. The Bureau trains every agent to look over bodies in murder investigations. The door opens to the sheriff's station and Sheriff Harris walks in. The search party had concluded, and Sheriff Harris is about to tell James of the findings. Unfortunately, there was not much to report. Some footprints were found, but it is uncertain if they belonged to Ryan. Other than that, nothing of substance was found. Agent Copper informed Sheriff Harris of what happened when Sarah's friends came in. He's also said that the FBI will begin surveillance tomorrow morning on Sarah's friend Emily. Perhaps the surveillance can lead to an opening in the case. Sheriff Harris was impressed and wished everyone a good night. The day was coming to an end. Sheriff Harris was on his way back to Christ Bay. Agent Copper would also depart and make his way home. Dawn picked up her purse and walked out the door. Sheriff James stood outside and watched everyone drive off. He thought over how the events of the day played out, and then left the station. Before Sheriff James passed the crime scene at the silo, he passed by the cul-de-sac. Down that neighborhood, Joe Sr., Ray, and Michael had just arrived home from the search party. They pulled up to Joe's house and stared over the dead grass from the Lance home. Ray continued his paranoid speech on how they have something to do with all the trouble going on. Michael told Ray and Joe that he would set up the camera again tonight. Joe was silent as Ray and Michael spoke out loud. This conversation came to an end, and they agreed to meet in the morning. Joe stood by his minivan and looked on as Ray and Michael went into their houses. The sun has begun to settle as Joe walked to the door of his house. He couldn't help but look over to the Lance house. Maybe Ray was right. Maybe that family has something to do with all the troubles in this town. Or maybe they're all just overthinking this.